Grazel again, and today we're going to be talking about conflict in couples, and we're just going to dive straight in. So, Grazel, why do so many couples get stuck in the same conflicts, even when they genuinely want things to improve?
I know it's really sad when I see that happens. It's mainly because they want to connect, right? They want to connect, so they end up repeating the patterns that actually fuel the disconnection. So sometimes couples don't know how to get out of a cycle, so they keep repeating the same fights over and over. And it's not because they're intentionally wanting to do that. It's just that they probably don't have the skills to get out of the same fight.
Mhm.
And they're probably trying to get their partner to understand them, but it's a their approach is creating more fights than more connection.
Mhm. And when a couple is in that situation and these fights kind of keep repeating, what are the things that they can maybe notice in themselves? Things that you typically notice in session that can be responsible for those conflicts.
Can you ask that question again?
What
Sorry.
sort of thing? What sort of things do you see in sessions that are typically responsible for these conflicts? Maybe things that they can notice themselves once they realize what they're looking for.
Yes. Thank you for repeating that. What we usually look for is their how each partner is regulating their affect, and it could be their fear mostly. So that's kind of what I have in mind is that if I'm looking at an individual or a couple, the first go to is how do they regulate emotion?
Mm-hmm.
And I will see behaviors in maybe the way they speak would look like they're regulating their fear by criticizing the other person. They're regulating their fear by shutting down. They're regulating their fear by explaining or proving that they're not doing anything wrong. Those are the behaviors that I'm looking for. I'm looking for how they're protecting their vulnerability to so that they don't have to show fear.
Mm-hmm. And I guess those vulnerabilities all come down to that inner work that we should all be doing on ourselves. So, we've all got trauma, we all go through stress, and then those things can show up in conflict in relationships, and that just kind of adds fuel to the fire if you're not working on that thing. So how do those kind of patterns show up in relationship when they haven't been resolved?
Um, it makes the connection a lot harder. It makes the fights more intense. It makes misunderstandings more often, happen often. Um, Sometimes, if there's trauma and stress, they don't have time. Well, first, if there's a lot of stress happening, a lot of partners don't have time to talk about their emotions. So they end up only talking about their emotions and needs when they're not being met already. So it turns into a fight because they don't have time to talk about it. If there's individual work that needs to be done and they're not in individual therapy, then that would definitely show up in the interactions because if we don't have our own self-awareness of where we're at, then you can expect that it will affect your fights.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of blame and criticism, and maybe less accountability and responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah, and if you're not taking ownership of that stuff yourself, the relationship eventually is going to reach a point where it can't be repaired potentially. Um,
Yes.
I know sometimes you see couples in this situation where they've decided to separate. Um, can they still do meaningful work together in that situation, or should they just go straight to individual therapy and kind of part ways entirely?
My answer to that is yes. Um, but also mostly yes. It's dependent on the couple that's separating. Some of them are done and don't want to continue any type of relationship the with each other, and at times that's okay and that's
Mm-hmm.
healthy and that's closure. Um, And can we create meaningful end to that closure, that type of closure where they don't want to have a relationship? Absolutely. But it ends, right? So it really
Mm-hmm.
depends on the goals of the couple. Um, are there couples that want to separate and continue relationships with each other, like co-parents? Absolutely. And can they create meaningful relationships? Yes, absolutely, for the sake of the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and last question. I know you know an absolute ton on this topic. How do neurodivergent dynamics like ADHD, how do they intensify conflict cycles even when the couple really love each other?
Yeah, so in a neurodiverse cycle, it's a little bit more complicated because unmanaged or untreated ADHD traits can spark negative responses in the non-ADHD partner that also fuel a negative cycle with their ADHD partner. So when the ADHD traits are not managed, and the behaviors affect the other partner, that in a negative way, that partner without the ADHD is going to respond to the traits negatively, and they're going to personalize it. It
Mm-hmm.
makes sense why they would personalize it, because sometimes uh, the level of inattentiveness in an ADHD brain can feel so personal, even though it's a neurobiological difference. Um, Understanding the science behind the ADHD brain is going to help them with the first step of de-escalating their cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Does it get intensified? Absolutely, especially if there's no understanding. Um, and what happens when it's very intense is that they get really stuck, and the personalization on both parties includes a deep layer of shame. So they can go in a deep, deep spiral very quickly. So the faster they attend to the relationship, as soon as they find out that it's a neurodiverse cycle, the better it is going to be for them.
Yeah, and that's stuff that you deal with in session all the time, and I know it's one of your specialisms. So, yeah, thank you again for your time, and we'll speak again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.